So, hey there, fellow philosophers. Our today's conversation is going to be about friendship. And to be honest with you, I didn't really plan on talking about friendship or the theory and concept of friendship. It kind of sparked in my mind throughout this week and kind of happened by accident, so to speak. And yeah, I would say I kind of got inspired by it and kind of made me thinking about, what is actual friendship? What is friendship? Do we need friends? Or if so, why do we need friends? And I have a feeling a lot of people these days don't really understand what actual friendship means and if their friends that they claim to have are actually friends for them. Now, I'm not knocking the people who have friends and claim that those people are their best friends. Of course, that's none of my business really, but I'm kind of talking about it more from a philosophical approach. And I think this is more of a dual question. I think we have to first ask ourselves, what is actually friendship? And if so, do we need friends? Or we can put it the other way around. Do we even need friends to begin with? And if yes, why do we need friends? Or what is true friends? What is the actual meaning of true friendship? And it's always been a subject for multiple important people, let's say, for kings, for princes, for leaders, authority subjects, and so on and so forth, to have friends. Because without friends, you're not really going to get far. And I think there's a quote that you can go far or you can go fast by yourself, but you can go far together or something like that. Now, again, there is some merit to it and there is some truth in that, of course. Because if you're going to be wandering around by yourself throughout your whole life, you're not really going to get too far. You might get fast from point A to point B, but you're not really going to get far in terms of quality. And many people confuse the concept of friendship, I would say, and especially in this modern day and age where people have a lot of social media apps and, ad and on-ad people back and forth on Instagram and Facebook, on Twitter or whatever. It's called X now, whatever. And a lot of people seem to understand it this way, that the more friends they have on Facebook, the more popular or the more important they get for some reason. And I think a lot of people base their lives on that kind of principle, which I must highly disagree with. And I myself, as a person who is not really someone who would have thousands of friends, I really have I have a pretty passionate opposition to that kind of concept. And I'm not trying to justify my reasons for not having friends. Now that is something different. But I'm trying to understand from both sides, first of all, why do people want friends and why people don't want friends. And this is going to be probably a central debate we'll have today. So, first of all, we are social creatures. We are not someone who would, live by ourselves forever and work our way up by ourselves. We need support, we need help, we need assistance, we need communication, we need exchange of information with other people, and so on and so forth. So, in other words, we are social creatures, and we cannot function on an individual loneliness principle basis. I must also say that friendship isn't necessarily only between two different people, and it could also simply be a friendship between you and your girlfriend, your spouse, you and your parent, your brother, your sister. That could also be a friendship. I think this is something what Aristotle was also speaking of, but we'll get to that a little bit later on Aristotle. And also, I must add that friendship doesn't necessarily correlate with acquaintance. Acquaintance is basically someone you know at work, at school, at university, in any other event or place that you participate in, that you simply just talk and exchange. So now that we got this kind of cleared up, I want to actually get deep down to the actual question, do we need friends? And with friendship, the question whether we need friends, I have to say you have to first ask yourself, why do you need? What is your idea or what is your goal and purpose of having friends? And I can speak for myself only. And me personally, I never liked really sharing my personal life with friends. I was never someone who would be so eager to hang out on a weekend with someone and talk about my life and exchange stupid information half the time. It wasn't even really a real conversation. It was just more something about external. It was never about you or him or her. It was always about something else, XYZ. It was never interesting, And I realized that every time I would pass by somewhere, I don't know, a bar or restaurant or could be any place else, I always realized that people never talk about themselves, and they never talk about their personal life or their personal achievements or goals. They always talk about external things. So what do I mean by that? I mean, like, people talk about hockey or football or some stupid movie that they watched, and they're gonna be like, "Oh, did you watch that movie? Oh yeah, cool. This actor and da, 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 da." I mean, okay, great. You can talk about that, but it's like, what is that why you need friends? Like, can't you just talk about it on Reddit or YouTube or somewhere else? Like, do you really need to just find someone to just bug him or her the whole time and talk about stupid things like that? I mean, again, now this is all subjective. I'm not saying that movies are stupid or anything like that. I mean, everyone each to their own, essentially. But it's just, for me personally, if I want a true friend, I want a friend who is very intellectual, who is also smart, who has ambitions, has goals, talks about productive things, topics, subjects that are interesting that I can learn from, basically where we can mutually contribute to each other and learn and grow together, and not just simply hang out and drink and get fat and lazy together. So that's kind of the point I'm trying to make here. And I have a feeling that if you want a real friend, you really should look inwards first. You should really become friends with yourself first. If you cannot love yourself, if you cannot be friends with yourself, then you're definitely not going to get along with other people too well. Or in other words, to rephrase that, you are going to have a hard time looking for friends or finding friends. Because if you can put this to the test, actually. You can say, well, let me become friends with myself first. And if I become friends with myself and I love myself, do I need friends after that? Do I really need them? That's a question that I've been asking myself for many years, actually. And I myself, who doesn't have any friends, I'm completely content with myself. I'm completely fine without friends, really. And in fact, I actually consider my family and my loved ones to be friends, if anything. And I don't need people, entertaining me and talking about their personal problems and stories. Like, I'm sorry, I don't have time for that. And I'm not gonna sit there and listen and, pat you on the back and be like, "Oh, I'm so sorry about that." Oh, things like that. I really don't need that. And one thing that's also very interesting that I've heard and read, actually, while I was preparing for this video and studying, is that it's this mental health problem or conundrum that I want to call it. And that mental health conundrum is that, well, if you don't have friends, then you must be depressed, or you must be sad, or there's something wrong with you. I really find it to be such a naive argument, to be honest. Why? Because I believe that depressed people, first of all, don't have a problem with friends. They have other issues. They don't have a problem with not finding friends. And I believe that if you don't have friends, you have to become friends with yourself. I'm again repeating my own argument here. And again, as far as I'm not really well versed into the subject of depression, I'm not really going to talk about it too much. But I believe that depressed people can have friends and still not be satisfied with their own problems. This is something else. And I believe that this is more of a cultural pressure on you personally to get friends, to just kind of fit into society and not be looked down upon or looked weird upon. And I have a feeling that, especially in this modern day and age, people are almost required to find friends and almost required to interact and always be on top of everything and always up to date and gossip and all of these things. Why don't you just sit down on a Friday evening, have some hot tea with your loved one, just sit and talk like a normal human being instead of just, I don't know, being on Instagram and making sure you have enough followers, etc., etc. This is like a complete contrast to what I'm talking about. And mental health doesn't have to necessarily correlate with not having friends, or having friends for that matter. And if you really look for external pleasure, then you really don't have any internal pleasure within yourself to begin with. And this is again something what Arthur Schopenhauer was saying, that we have to first satisfy ourselves. We have to first be content with ourselves before looking for external events or pleasures. Because if we don't have that, then we cannot operate in the world accordingly. Now, going to the Aristotelian argument, he said that we cannot have a fulfilling life, or we cannot live a life without friends, without companions. Now, this is a very bold claim to make, or a very bold statement. Now, I'm not knocking Aristotle, but I definitely have to say that we can completely and utterly live a life without friends as well. Now, I don't mean that living in complete isolation, or maybe you can if you want. If you want to really escape the matrix in that sense, then you can go on and live somewhere in the woods, in a cabin somewhere. Sure, go do that. But I think you are not required to have friends to live a fulfilling life. Now, I want to talk about true friendship. So we talked about why we need friends, whether we need friends, if we need friends. Now I want to talk about what is true friendship. So if I were to look for a friend, if I wanted to get a good, real, true friend, the first thing I would look for is loyalty, is honesty, and intellect. Now, when I look for a friend, that usually means that I'm looking for someone to do business with, most likely, to partner with someone and to do some actual business, work on a project, to exchange information, to learn from each other, and so on and so forth. I'm not looking for friends who are just going to drink or just do absolutely nothing, play video games throughout the day. This is not my type of friendship that I'm looking for. I'm looking for someone who has a very similar mindset to me, who has ambition, who wants to grow and learn from each other, from other people, and to grow business with. And unfortunately, or maybe fortunately, if you want to look at on the other hand, let's go first with the unfortunate part, which is that unfortunately, a lot of people are not like that. A lot of people in this modern day and age are simply too lazy. They are not ambitious. They're too satisfied with their current position they're in. They're comfortable. All they talk about is football, sports, hockey, tennis, video games, movies. Boring. Absolutely boring. I'm gonna be so bored. Like I'm really someone who's gonna get bored to death with those types of people. I'm just gonna leave the room the very next day, or the very next minute even. And I want a person. It doesn't matter where I find that person. I really want a person, a friend, if I wanted a friend who is not gonna do these types of things, who is gonna really progress with me together, to have some value, to have some loyalty, to have some interest, some like something that is gonna spark in that person's mind, and that I can see that this person is really like a sparkling human being. And again, maybe this is an idealistic profile I'm making here, but I certainly believe that there are some people, because there's a large variety in this world, I do believe that there are people who are like this. And again, I'm not saying that I'm 100% perfect, but I'm certainly someone who is, or who would be like that as well. That's why I'm also describing this type of profile. This is for me true friendship. Now, again, for many other people, true friendship can mean something else. It can mean that you have a brother who is taking care of you, or you have someone who takes care of you, and this is, for you a very deep, meaningful relationship, friendship, and so on and so forth. I totally get that. I totally understand. And I also understand the reasons why people need friends or want friends, whether they need it or not, etc., etc. I also completely understand that. And I also must mention that there are also different types of friendships. There's regular friendship, there's bromances, there's the opposite of bromance, sister-mance or whatever. I'm not sure what that particular definition or that particular name is at the moment. There's also platonic friendships, which is more of a loving but not a sexual friendship, and so on and so forth. So there's different varieties of friendships. And to conclude, all in all, I'm definitely someone who, especially throughout my college years, I've undergone a lot of isolation, I would say, due to personal reasons. And I'm certainly someone who learned to live with myself completely fine. And that's why I'm also more passionate about the fact or about the opinion that people do not need necessarily friends, but rather more acquaintances and people to simply interact with. That is, I think, way more important than actually having a friendship, because that's also quite a dedication you'll have to make. Because if you think friendship is like once a week having a beer, then that's more like an acquaintance, I would say, rather than a friendship. To me, a friendship is really someone who is daily for you, who would pick up the phone whenever you need it, whenever you are in danger or something's going on in your life, and the person is always going to be there for you 24/7. Honestly, this sounds like a relationship at this point. You might as well date that person if that's a friendship. And again, I think friendship is very important if you're going to date someone. And I think the basis of a relationship is friendship and not the other stuff before that. If you don't have friendship established in that relationship, then you're not really going to have a successful relationship, in my opinion. And I think me, who has gone through 4 years of college without, any real friends, so to speak, or someone who was isolated the whole time, I really believe that you will learn to love yourself a lot, and you will learn to feel comfortable. And once you feel comfortable with yourself, man, this is going to be a dangerous thing for many other people in this world, because they are not going to be able to influence you in any way, shape, or form. They're not really going to be able to manipulate you or to try to lure you into any particular situation. And it's going to be very hard for them to even get along with you and to become friends if they wanted to be friends. Now, I'm not saying that in a negative way. I'm not saying that you're going to, become some evil guy and hate people and not want to be friends. I'm just saying that it's going to be harder to trick you into things, and you're going to be walking around with a bigger shield around you, which in many ways is good. In many ways, it's very beneficial for you personally and not beneficial for many other people. And I also believe that it is not worth having endless friends to satisfy your own needs. I have a feeling that people who also want to seek friends, they simply want to satisfy their needs and wants. And if you really want to satisfy your needs and wants, first satisfy your own needs before using other people. This is basically kind of, in my opinion, using other people for your own benefit. Or if you want to call it friends with benefits, but that's a little bit different. But you kind of get my point where I'm getting at. And really consider how many people you want to allow into your life. Like, how many people would you want to have in your life who would know about your personal details, your personal life, your family, and so on and so forth? I'm personally someone who doesn't like to share any type of information with strangers, with people that I don't know, or even with acquaintances, really. Well, granted, with acquaintances, I definitely share a little bit more, but not to the point of extreme detailed personal information. But at the same token, I also don't want people to know too much about me as well. I believe mystery is a powerful thing. And I also believe that privacy is also key to many other things, especially if you have a relationship. Keeping it extremely private is going to help you in the long term, because people are not going to be able to attack you. People are not going to be able to say anything about you, to use any arguments against you to begin with, or to simply bully you. But again, people can bully you about virtually everything. And honestly, I don't care if people are gonna be attacking me or whatsoever. Like at this point, I've already built so much immunity that it's pretty hard to take me apart at this point. And all in all, I think this is the personal matter. You have to just ask yourself, do you need friends? Do you want friends? If yes, what is friendship for you? What is the real definition of a true friendship? And I really hope that you have good friends in the long term, And again, I really don't want to make it sound like I'm against friends. I don't want to make it sound like I'm knocking people who have best friends and loyal friends. Of course, absolutely, I encourage that. I want people to interact. I want people to engage in a face-to-face conversation with people. I believe that we need to get off social media much more and actually go to places and meetings and events to talk. I believe that phones is really kind of an issue or something that kind of desensitized or ruined the whole meaning and concept of friendship. And I really hope that people wake up and actually go out, put their phones down and talk to people. And hopefully people establish and create meaningful relationships, friendships, acquaintances, whatever it may be ultimately. All right, so I think that wraps it up. And I hope you really enjoyed that video. It might be controversial, but that's exactly what I like. And I really like when you guys like to argue with me on YouTube. This is very entertaining for me, and it's also very beneficial because that's how I learn from you guys, and you guys can learn from me. I like those types of exchange of information ultimately. And if you guys have any further comments, criticisms, praises, whatever it may be, type it down below, subscribe, like, and see you in the next video.